Welcome, friends, to another episode of MJ Hobby Corner. And today I want to prepare session 0 for a game of 1 hour war games by Neil Thomas. And a few things about this rule set. First and foremost, it's one of my favorite go-to rule sets when I want a very fast game. This is one of the simplest war game rules that you will encounter. Now, this game is a historical war game. It is not designed as a fantasy or alternate history game. But there are a number of things that I do in order to be able to play this game in a way that I can include fantasy or alternate history. Now, the game is extremely simple, to the point that many historical gamers do criticize the game for its oversimplicity, and the fact that one of the interesting things about this game is that it basically portrays all the major time periods in history. And many war gamers, historical gamers, feel that you just, can't really capture all the flavor of those time periods in a single rule set. And I get that. It is a very simplistic game. There are no hit rolls. There are no saving throws. There's no armor. There's basically your units, if they have line of sight, you roll, and whatever you roll is the damage, and that you apply to the enemy unit. Now, every unit in the game has 15 hits, and once those hits are reduced to 0, the unit is taken out of the game. Now, in order to be able to add some of the time period flavors, the game does have several different rules that affect how units interact with terrain depending on the time period that you choose. So, for example, some time periods may restrict units from going into forests, whereas other time periods may allow certain units to go into forest and to take advantage of forest terrain. Likewise, there is an interesting penalty bonus mechanic integrated into the game, so that when you roll for damage, depending on the unit that's doing the shooting or the fighting, there will be penalties or bonuses applied to the total hit. So, for example, if, let's say, in the medieval period, if my knights are fighting against, let's say, enemy skirmishers, knights have a lot heavier armor and all of that good stuff. And so, I may apply a penalty to the enemy's hit because they're fighting my knights, right? So similar things. So by playing around with these penalties and bonuses, you can portray different units throughout history, right? It's an interesting way to approach it. For me, the interesting thing about this game is the simplicity of this game. Okay, now you can, I will mention later, you can add a deck of regular cards which represent an event deck, and that does give you a little more flavor as well. It changes things a little bit. Now, a very important thing, this game I love using for my alternate history and fantasy play. I have, I think, an elegant way of representing magic for those earlier time periods. And it goes very well hand in hand with the simplicity of the game. I'll have to show that in a future video. So for today, we're going to play World War I using my walkers. I haven't had an opportunity to actually play with these mesh armies. And one thing I want to say is that originally, mesh armies were constructed for use with these rules. That's why I actually began constructing mesh armies. It had to do with this game. Now in front of you, you see my Napoleonic orcs, or orcs with muskets, and we have an intrepid orc leader back there on the white wolf, and nothing says follow me or else than an orc with a top hat, a monocle, and riding a white wolf. It simply just yells out follow me or else. But there's my example of orcs, and of course a lot of these units could be used. I can mix them in with other units. There is the mortar teams, and I have a Nordenfelt multi-barreled weapon represented there in the middle of the artillery. So obviously mesh armies have allowed me to really build units that I can use in fantasy and alternate history games of my choosing. Now, World War One specifically is very underrepresented in historical war games and in many fictitious settings as well. And there are many reasons for this, I think, but we're not going to go into that in this video. But World War One definitely represented, it was a very horrible war, especially in the stalemate of the trenches, and even in the Eastern Front. It was just a terrible war with a lot of technological innovations and things that really changed warfare in the future. And one of those things is the invention of the tank. Now, in World War One, tanks were notorious for breaking down, and they were not very pleasant machines. I mean, from some of the accounts that I've read, you know, they smelled of petrol, and the first tank crews actually wore gas masks because the petrol smell was that bad. And these tanks generally did break down in no man's land, some of them before even reaching the trenches. And tanks were supposed to be the thing that they were invented particularly to break that stalemate that was occurring in the Western Front. Now, as a result of the Christie suspension system, the invention of that suspension system, it actually made tanks a very important component in warfare later on, specifically in World War II. But tanks always had that little bit of, a breakdown, that notoriety for breaking down. In World War II, at least, Sherman tanks that broke down were actually fixable by many of the crews, whereas you had German tanks which were very good and in combat, but were also very complex and very expensive. And when they broke down, their crews oftentimes had to abandon them. So in this particular rule set, the author does not include vehicles in World War I. Specifically, I think part of the reason, although the author does give his own reasons for that, part of the reason is, of course, this game is very simple. It's meant to be a very simple rule. Now, in the World War II version of these rules, he does have the hit chart, which then includes tanks, because, of course, tanks were very important in World War II. Now, there's no aircraft here, although aircraft become the much more important factor in World War II. They start off in World War I, but become much more important in World War II as an offensive weapon. And of course, there is a change of doctrine in World War II warfare that said, if you control the air, you control the war. And that was very true. But this game doesn't incorporate aircraft. It keeps things as simple as possible. And that's one of the reasons why I like this game. Now, in future games, and for science fiction games, my go-to rules are Horizon Wars Combined Arms. And I use my mesh armies for that. And that's because I really like the way Horizon Wars takes into account all of the different assets that could occur in a futuristic battlefield. And I think that we can use Horizon Wars combined arms for a World War II setting with walkers. Okay, but we'll explore that in the future. So for this game, every unit has 15 hits. I don't modify that. So basically, once a unit is reduced to 0, it is out of the picture. So here's MJ's tray. This is Julie's tray. We're going to have Julie be an imaginary player in this game since I'm playing it solo. This game plays very well solo. I will be using the event deck, although I had to modify the table because it doesn't make sense, the numbers for the card deck. It labeled numbers like 1 through 15. So I actually modified it so it would work better with the cards. And it gives a good flavor to any of the time periods. And then these are the two armies. Now, these guys here, they represent an army similar to the British. These are going to be fictitious human armies. So these would be my British, and then these would be another, probably the Turkish army. They would represent that kind of force. Now, these are two patrols, basically. These are vanguard forces in front of larger forces, and they're here basically to claim the terrain. We're going to set up the table in just a minute. To claim the terrain, claim the objectives so that the supply lines can move through here. And this is going to be very, very critical, getting supply lines from one place to the other. The Eastern Front of World War I, that's one of the primary objectives, is moving supply lines and large forces that are moving very rapidly across a variety of terrain, including alpine regions, mountain regions, desert. There was also heavy rains and things that turned areas into mud, right? So there was, the terrain was a lot more varied in the Eastern Front, as opposed to what we see in the Western Front with the trenches, all right? So I'm going to stick to that here in our games as well. So that's going to be the scenario I'm going to use using 1 hour war games is scenario number 2, which is a pitch battle, but it involves protecting a crossroads and a hill. And I think that's perfect for the whole supply line idea. So I'm choosing to play a 3-unit game. You can choose either 3 units, 4 units, or 6 units. And the interesting thing about this method, force construction is completely random off of tables. And one of the interesting things is that this has an artificial scaling mechanism to it. And what I mean by that is I could remove these bases here and say that those are my 3 units. And now I'm playing a very small kind of skirmish style game. But to add a little more flavor, we can add these bases, and I can even make these units larger to represent larger battles. The number of hits for every unit remains the same. Okay, it's 15 all around. And basically what I'm saying is these 3 armored cars, which stick to my lore that there are no tanks in this version in this front. In the Eastern Front, there's no tanks because of the terrain. They wouldn't do well at all. And basically, armored cars would be the main support for infantry. So we have this here is 1 unit. This here is 1 unit. And then we have the walker, the massive walker, which is here more as a weapon of shock and awe more than everything else. And here is a machine gun nest. Okay, now these machine gunners are, they give bonus to infantry. All right, they give bonus to infantry. Because I added a machine gun unit, that becomes a heavy infantry unit, and they are +3 versus all other infantry, +1 against everything else. So that's going to make them pretty tough. Now on my end, I have a massive crawler. Now there is a difference between crawlers and walkers. Walkers are bipedal, like these little guys here, these walker pods. And crawlers are either quadrupeds or hexapods, like insects. We have my regular infantry unit, which is composed of 3 bases. So this is an incomplete battalion. Basically, 4 of these bases make 1 battalion. So if I wanted to play battalion level, that's what I do. And then my big crawler, which is going to be my weapon of awe and shock. And this guy has a number of guns positioned on it, and yeah, it's just a big thing. Look at that turreted weapon on the bottom as well. Okay, so we set up a table here for our demo game, and we have the crossroads right here, and we have the hill right here. Those are the 2 objectives. And then we have the enemy force, part of which is deployed in this area here. And I did that randomly with a D3 to see where they would deploy. We have the troops there. We have the column of armored cars on the road, and then we have the walker off to the side there, that massive bipedal walker. And then these are my guys. We have my troop column here, my infantry. We have the battle pods right here. These are bipedal. And then we have the massive crawler off to the side here. Now, in order to play this game, we will need our tape measure, our 6-sided dice, of course, a way to keep track of individual hits. My cards, if you're using an event deck, then that's what the cards are there for. And then in terms of rules, we have the scenario rules. And this is scenario 2, the pitch battle. We see the map with the crossroads, and we see the hill up there. And usually what I do is I set up those pieces of terrain first, whatever's on that map, and then I decorate it as I will with other pieces of terrain. You can also use a random method of applying terrain. And then, of course, we need the Machine Age War Game rules, which are the rules representing World War I. And there's like 3 pages of these, really. It's all it is. Every time period has its own rules, its own flavors. So I will be following this in addition to my house rules for walkers, and I will be adding my own house rules for crawlers and walkers. All right, so game is ready, and the objective is to take control of both these things. These are 2 patrols, 2 vanguard forces that are going to fight each other for these objectives, and whoever takes these objectives is going to facilitate supply line moving through, particularly that road there. So the hill is just high ground that will be necessary to oversee the protection of the crossroads. So I have to, in order to control an objective, we need to have 1 unit there finishing the turn. And if the game ends where I have 1 unit on the hill and 1 unit on the crossroads, then I win the game. If the opposite happens, then the opponent wins the game. If I only control 1 of the 2 objectives, it's a partial victory. Preferably, we want to control the crossroads, all right? So there we go. Now, in video number 2, we will continue with this game set in fictitious World War I, the Eastern Front, complete with walkers. All right, folks, thanks for joining me in this session 0. This is something new that I'm doing. I hope you guys don't mind, but a session 0 allows me to talk about the game and maybe add some other concepts and ideas, scratch building that I may have specifically designed for games like this. All of that can be piled up into a session 0, and then that means that the following video we can concentrate on just the game itself. All right, so in video 2 we will resolve this battle and see where it goes. Have a great one, and see you in the next video. Thank you for your support. Have a great one.